One of the things that is important for people to understand is that there is no connection between violent behavior and autism or Asperger. That isn't a symptom of the disability. Autism, basically people have difficulties in three areas. They have difficulties with communication, socialization, and they have restricted interests, which means they're usually playing with a limited number of toys when they're little, and when they're older they might get really involved in a particular topic or spend a lot of time on the computer or just not have the variety of activities that a typical person would have. And Asperger is sort of considered a less severe, quote-unquote, form of autism, where they'll usually have difficulties with socialization and sometimes have restricted interests, but we don't see those communication delays. Usually their their language comes in fine. They may have a little difficulty with social communication, but their language structures come in fine, and they're usually very bright. A lot of the people diagnosed with Asperger's are usually very bright. Children diagnosed with autism or Asperger usually do socially isolate themselves. And so it is important for people to pay attention to that, because there are a lot of great programs that are published in the research that show that these behaviors can improve. We can teach children how to socialize and be effective at socialization. But more often, when we think about this whole issue of aggression, it's usually the opposite. There's a lot of research showing that more often children with autism or Asperger's are bullied and victimized, and that's way more than typical kids. So it really is an issue that we need to really educate typical children and typical people in society to really not tease and bully and reject these people, but to treat them as they are human beings. And likewise, people with autism or Asperger need specialized intervention programs so that they can learn to socialize effectively. Many times when we see these tragic situations, we find that the people have many diagnoses. It's not just autism. They often have a diagnosis of other mental health conditions, and the important thing is that it's not, the autism or Asperger is not generally associated with violence. There are a lot of people that have mental health disorders, and it's oftentimes very hard to tell. Obviously, if we had a way of reading into the future, we'd know who needs the more intensive interventions. So the real goal, I think, would be to just have a red flag. If any child or adult is spending a lot of time in social isolation, we need to really address that problem. And I think every time you hear about one of these really horrific incidents, we always hear that the person was socially isolated and they didn't have a lot of friends, and that's just so common. And that's something that we need to address as a society.